What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Dead Noise. I'm Chris, and thanks to the power of Zoom, I am here with one of my favorite people in the music industry. She is a wonderful podcaster with her Knotfest show, She's with the Band, as well as the show Beyond the Breakdown, and a publicist extraordinaire with one of the greatest companies in all of the industry, Adam Splitter PR, Miss Tori Kravitz. How are you doing today?
Hello. Wow, so bold. One of your favorite people in the industry. Sheesh, that's like a lot to live up to today, but I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here and like not just talk to you in my email inbox. It's great.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And before we really get into it, I want to give a shout out to our mutual friend Austin Torres for getting us acquainted. We've I've been friends with him for a couple years now through the horror scene. And I know for a fact he's told me how you guys like got connected with each other, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. So if you remember, how did you guys meet and what made you guys start working together?
Obviously, being a publicist, I always want to see what's up and coming in the podcast world. And horror and metal music are so intertwined. So I get really excited when I see a platform that combines those two things. So I'm 100% positive that Austin and I connected because I was so excited to see that that's what he was doing and what he was open to doing. So I was just booking any artists I had that were like aligned in those interests that were willing to talk about horror movies, but also were in the music world because that's who I represent in PR. So yeah, him and I collaborated on quite a few episodes. So yeah,
It's funny how you brought up like communicating via email, because I was wondering, because for those who don't know behind the scenes, we have an email thread of like 70 something emails.
it's
And,
a really big thread. I think
and
we
I
need to
know
start a new one.
I was gonna ask because I know Amy is like she's one to like have a separate thread for everything. She doesn't like extensive feeds. So I was wondering if that was something that bothers you, if we should
Yes,
start a new one.
it drives me nuts. Well, you know what it is like it's hard to find. Let's say like we book an interview. I know you had Pistols at Dawn on
Yeah.
recently, but like now I want to find the thread where we booked that. I kind of can't by the subject line.
Hmm.
So I prefer having separate threads. I don't know how we got to this point. I never let this happen. I am so sorry.
In a
Amy
way,
would die if she saw that. She would be like floored.
in a way, it does kind of make things easier because knowing that it's all in one place. But like you said, having to scroll all the way to like
Brutal.
November and like we're in
Yeah.
February now at the time of this recording.
I
Um,
think it's just organically happened that we've snowballed this thread that I just like can't get out of, which is totally fine. But yeah, we'll fix that.
Absolutely. The next email I send you will be outside of the thread for sure.
But at this point, should we also set the world record for the longest email thread? Should we just keep going?
Let's go for 100. I
Okay.
mean, we're
I like
we're
that.
already more than halfway there, so I
We
say
stop at
by
100.
yes, absolutely. I don't care what the conversation is. No offense, I love your company, but at 100, we just cut it off.
I'm just gonna start sending you like bullshit emails just to get us to 100 so I can get out of that thread then.
Like I'm above that. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Teal.
So let's talk about you for a minute because that's why we're here. You got your start in a very interesting spot because obviously Adam Splitter and She's with the Band are known for like rock and metal bands. But if I remember correctly, you got your start interviewing pop acts, right?
It was interesting because so my YouTube channel when I was really young was called Rock Forever Magazine. And it started as like kind of scene bands, but like I was interviewing pop acts too. Like I would interview anybody. But I think that's kind of why it worked is because I was down for anything.
Hmm.
So like that channel has Ariana Grande and Imagine Dragons on it, but then it also has Black Veil Brides and Asking Alexandria on it. So it was just like everything. But I've always been in the rock scene. Like that was always my love and like why I did the YouTube channel. And those were always the interviews I was most excited for. But
Hmm.
yeah, there were quite pop acts, YouTubers.
Wasn't your first interview, was it All-Star Weekend or
Oh, you went really far back. You saw it all. Yes.
I do my
Well, the
research.
first one I ever did was a band called the Downtown Fiction, but that was not for my channel at the time. Like no one can find that. I realize I've just challenged whoever's listening to go find it. But that was the first one I ever did. And then All Star Weekend was like the second interview ever.
Okay. I knew I
First
was
one on my
close.
channel.
So for those who don't know, I know a lot of people are probably sick of either hearing this question or answering it, but what made you want to start interviewing bands? Because I know that every interviewer, every radio broadcaster kind of has that catalyst memory of like what made them think, I want to do this. I know I definitely do. So was there a certain personality or a certain artist that really made you want to pursue this as a career?
It's interesting because I think for me it was more so I when I was before I had ever done it, I was really big on street teams on MySpace or like passing out promo cards. And back then, that's how you would promote bands. You would go in a line at a concert and pass out promo cards. Like I was always really passionate about just supporting the music I loved and finding ways to do that. And so that's how I got involved in a friend's music blog. Very quickly got into that. Um, and then I realized I could start my own because she was doing it DIY. Why couldn't I? So it was more so just like I saw it as an opportunity to get really involved in the music in a way that was like actually firsthand with the artists. And to me, that was just really cool. Like, I just thought that was so exciting to be able to go back in a green room and ask these bands I loved, like my burning questions about the albums I love. And so I was just excited and like passionate and wanted to be in it. And as like somebody who had no ties to the music industry, who didn't know anybody, it seemed like running a music blog was the most approachable way to get a foot in, which ended up being the case. So, but it was a grind at first for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more difficult and just more time consuming behind the scenes than I think a lot of people realize because there is editing involved and that takes a bunch of time depending on your style. But also the preparation and everything like that. Was there was there a certain point where it wasn't fun for you anymore, where it was like it started to feel more like work than like what you thought it would be?
Mm, for sure. There were of course moments like that because I you're right. That's what people don't realize is the interview like the point where you're sitting with the band is like just the surface. Then underneath, there's like all these layers of work you have to do. The preparation takes a couple hours at least of research, and especially if you're doing a good job on it. The editing takes God knows how long. Exporting the videos,
Oh my God.
writing the captions, promoting the interviews. Like all of that takes so much work and like getting people to actually watch it, which in turn gets you more interviews. Like it's such a hustle. So like for anybody who's wanting to get into it just to sit down with a band, my God, you're going to be disappointed real quick.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I was doing an interview every week was posted on my YouTube channel for 5 years. It got intense for sure. And I was also in school, I was in high school. So, high school life is demanding,
Yeah.
standardized testing. Like I had normal teen pressures on me in addition to essentially having a job.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot. So, but I think that's what I respect so much about people who stay in the music industry for a long time is I know anyone who's here for that long loves it and has paid their dues.
That's a really good way to put it, and that definitely makes a lot of sense because I know for a fact a lot of the time it's hard to keep up with certain things, even if it's just like album releases or just following one band. It gets a lot in the mix up of like just trying to balance your own life and then following another band and see what they're doing with their career. It gets hard to keep up with. So to
Yeah,
be invested in a whole genre and follow multiple bands, it is a lot, but
it's
like
my
you
whole
said,
life.
it's for the love of the game, right?
Exactly. Really, my whole life revolves around my work. So like work-life balance, maybe not the best, but to me, like I know you asked if it ever felt like work, and even though there are moments where it can, I would say generally speaking, to this day, no, because I just love it. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I tried and I came back.
Um, well, to that point, because you've been in since the MySpace days, basically, and you've been doing what you're doing for a long time, how has the music industry changed for people in your position, whether both as an interviewer and Publicist. How have you seen the industry change for the better, or maybe not for the better?
I would say generally it's for the better in terms of like when it comes to being a journalist or being a fan of music because music discovery has never been easier. I remember I used to have to really scour the internet to find new bands or like on MySpace I'd be looking at like who are my friends, what's on my friends' profiles or like you genuinely had to get a promo card at a show or buy an album based on the album cover and hope that it's good. And now it's so easy on Spotify to find whatever you want, anything you want, anytime. So I appreciate that music discovery is so much easier. I think it's a little challenging the way that social media is what it is, though, because it's so saturated. Like, at times I'm overwhelmed, and I feel for the artists who have to play the social media game. Like, they have to be influencers and personalities. They can't just be musicians anymore. So like it's kind of a blessing and a curse where it's made artists' careers, but it's also made artists' careers harder
Hmm.
because they have to be more than just a musician. They have to be their own marketing person and all these things. But I guess to some degree that existed on MySpace too. Fans had to comment back or post bulletins or like in little ways that existed, but I think the scale is just so much like the work is so much more. Um and I think even as a journalist, it's a little harder because I have to cross promote on more platforms than I used to.
Yep.
I could just be a YouTuber back then and not have to worry about like 10 other social media platforms or like, oh, should I be live streaming? Should I be on Twitch? Should I have a Discord? I'm like, it's a lot. It's a lot. The production value of content is so different now too. Like if you look back at my Warped Tour pit blogs, they're super DIY. And not only was that the charm of it, but that's like what the whole point was. It was a
Hmm.
vlog, like when people would vlog. And I don't think that's really passable anymore. People expect their YouTube videos to be like cinematic quality, sharp editing, quick. The attention span is so short that it has to be fast moving and like TikToks have to be super tight. Like content production value is totally different. Like quality standards are really high now.
I remember Warped Tory and watching the pit blogs and everything. And when I started doing in-person interviews, I liked the whole man on the street style. And I think some fans kind of still prefer that, like that DIY style, because it brings more of a personal side to the interview, both for the interviewer and the musician. But like you said, TikTok, there's like some really cinematic stuff on there. It's no longer just Vine 2.0. Um,
Fine.
but from the perspective, because I know you have to deal with this with She's with the Band and Beyond the Breakdown. From one introvert to another, how do you deal with the content creator angle and having to put yourself out there to promote your work? Is it difficult for you too?
Yeah, I'm very introverted. I think people don't realize that about me because I am always like yapping on the internet. But when I'm home, like I have to recharge. Um, It's weird though because I do think in my work energizes me. Doing interviews, being at festivals like that really like it unlocks a different part of me. I think because I love it so much. So you could put me in a festival for 4 days and I will thrive. But if you put me in the bar down the street, I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. This is my hell. So it's weird. Like I'm totally fine in those environments.
Did you have to adjust to being on camera when you were first starting out? Like, was it uncomfortable at first being on camera? Like, not just interviewing someone that you really look up to, but also having to do it on camera. Because I know just the existence of a camera really like intimidates a lot of people when they know they're being recorded. So was that something that you struggled with at the start?
It's weird. It was never really the camera that got me. I think more so it was the pressure of the people I was talking to. I mean, one of my first interviews was Never Shout Never, who I worshipped when I was 14, you
Hmm.
know? So it was more so I was nervous about the people I was around and the pressure of knowing my questions, writing good questions, and especially if there was an artist I didn't know super well, would I be able to hold the conversation acting like I know them extremely well
Hmm.
and having the confidence in my research being enough and kind of So I went through this weird like fake it till you make it point in the beginning. I mean you could see it in those early interviews how nervous I was, but it wasn't really the camera. It was just like the pressure of the opportunity itself. Um, but yeah, I was really lucky though because my mom filmed a lot of my early interviews. She was so supportive. She still is, but she doesn't listen to my podcast. She's busy now, but she's still so supportive. But she's also a public speaking coach. Essentially, is kind of what her work is. So I had her guidance along the way, which really helped me feel a little more confident because I knew she would give it to me straight.
It's always good to have somebody like that in your corner for sure. It's funny you
Yeah.
mentioned that because my dad is like that with me. Anytime I do like in-person interviews, he goes to the shows with me, like that's kind of our thing. So when we're doing
Cute.
interviews, he's normally the guy behind the camera, just making sure nobody steps out of the frame, making sure the mics don't drop out. Even though he's a hearing impaired ex-Marine, he's the audio guy. Um, but yeah, it's really nice to have like someone else there just to make sure things are going right. When it came to first starting out and building your brand, so to speak, from a professional standpoint or a confidence standpoint, were there any aspirational shots that you took that maybe didn't land the way that you hoped they would?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I from the start was very much a the worst they could say is no, go for it kind of person. So I always dreamed really big. I mean, you could even see with some of the names I ended up with on my channel. I was just like, I'm just going to request them. What's the worst that could happen? Just do it. And I was always really excited for those wins. I don't think there was anything, I think everything happens when it's supposed to. And there were maybe things where it felt really out of my depth when I did it, but I took it as a challenge to rise to the occasion, which I think helped me grow. So even if maybe I had imposter syndrome internally, I always would be like, well, I'm gonna do it. I just kind of had that mindset of going for it. And even if maybe it was something where I was a little out of my depth, I would learn from that experience. I think the only thing where I'm like, oh, that was kind of embarrassing is, but this was like not even, nobody knows about this story because it was never like published or anything. But I requested a photo pass for a Hillary Duff book signing. Now, I need you to understand, I was a part of the Hillary Duff fan club.
Hmm.
That was the first concert I ever went to, and I sobbed hysterically when she came on stage. I was like 12 years old, maybe 11 years old. I worshiped Hillary Duff. And now I was maybe 16, 17 with this photo pass for her book signing. And I was in a like photo area with my DSLR amongst like newspaper reporters, like old guys. It was like old guys and then me. Like I really kind of didn't belong in that photo area. And also like what was I doing with photos? I like had a YouTube channel. How did I even get here? And as soon as she walked out, I started crying. Like I had my camera hiding my face because I was like so emotional because I knew how much that meant to like younger me to be
Hmm.
there in front of her like that. And it just felt very full circle. So I got myself out of the photo area and went into the meet and greet line. I was like, Tori, go where you're supposed to be. Get out of here. You're not pressed today.
Oh my God, I love that. That's the best.
I just excused myself. I only took maybe like 5 photos, started crying, and was like, just go where you're supposed to be, Tori. Get out of here.
I thought you were going to bring up the Deftones story, the Deftones request.
Yeah,
Like
like there
they,
were a lot of requests like that. Like I requested crazy interviews that I was not gonna get all the time. But what happens if they say yes?
yeah, that
They said
that's
no, obviously, but
I mean, that's a mantra to live by, especially in this field, because you never know who will say yes. That's something that I dealt with, especially in the first year of doing Dead Noise. I was like, okay, who's gonna say no? But I still shot the shot anyway. And my first
yeah,
interview ended up being Palisades. Then I also got to interview like Joe Bouchard, who's a founding member of Blue Oyster Cult, and that's for people who know me know like that's my one of my favorite bands of all time. So like the fact that I
so
was
cool.
even able to work that out, I was like, wait a minute, how did this happen? But like you
Yeah.
said, you just gotta shoot or shoot. And the worst I can say is no. So
Yeah, I mean, I requested an interview with Justin Bieber at his height. Like, no. But I ended up getting an interview with the opening act. So I was backstage at that show,
Oh wow.
you know? So it's like, you just don't know. Bieber said no, but their opening act said yes.
Yeah.
You just got to shoot the shot.
And when it came to you transitioning into like PR work and being on the other side of it as a publicist and being the one to book these interviews, um, how did your mindset change in the sense of like how you do interviews? Like when you came back and did She's with the Band, for instance, did your experience from being behind the scenes and being the one to like make these interviews happen, did that kind of change the way you conduct your own interviews?
That's a really good question. I would say no, not really. I think if anything, the only thing maybe it changed is now like I kind of understand what a publicist needs while booking the interview. So it's made my booking process with other artists a lot easier because I know what a public like, okay, let me give you the location, the time, how much time it's gonna take, like all the information I would need for booking interviews, I now know to give literally in one email to somebody to avoid back and forth. But I would say in terms of my actual interview and conversation process, it's exactly the same.
That was something I always try to be cognizant of when I would request interviews because I know people like want to keep the email short, but I'm like, look, they need this information. Like you said, the
Yeah.
time, the date, the location.
That.
W would it be better to like just send a bulleted list of certain things when requests get sent out? Like if
Yes.
you could pinpoint it, what's the ideal request email look like?
I'm foaming at the mouth because I want everyone who's listening that has a publication to listen up. Yeah, I want all the information in one request email. I do not like if I could not ask follow-up questions on what I need, say, I need your all the links to your platforms. Give me the stats, how many listeners, viewership, whatever your measure is, depending on what you do. I need the stats, demographic information. How much time is your interview going to take? What format? Is it on phone, Zoom, in person? If it's in person, what date, what location? What are your also your availability? What days and times are you available? Yeah. I think that's everything. Yeah. What's crazy is I've had people request interviews and not even put the artist name. We've seen it before where someone's like, I want to request an interview. And I'm like, dude, do you know how many artists we work with? So
Hmm.
like, but sometimes when the faux pas is that bad, I don't even care who you're requesting. It's a no. I actually don't care who it is. No.
Uh,
Like if you don't know that you need to put the artist in the email, I don't even want to know how that interview is gonna go.
that's amazing. It's like Amy
Yeah.
told me once. She's like, you don't realize how many people we get, and they'll ask the same question to every artist, not even knowing that there's an album out when we sent them the
Hmm.
press release. Um,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah. I've seen it all.
I don't want you to blow up anyone's spot, but what was maybe the biggest faux pas that you've seen from a PR standpoint, like from a request perspective?
Hmm. I feel like I have to kind of think about that. I I think really the biggest faux pas is people feeling really entitled to certain things. Like if somebody says, "Oh, I want to film backstage," I'm like, "You can't do that." Or people who are just demanding and don't say please and thank you. I think like people, there's a lot of egos in the music industry, and especially I understand that outlets want to feel like they need to prove themselves or they need to act important. But to me, that's a huge faux pas that I see a lot is people feeling like they're somebody or trying to act like they're somebody. It doesn't, I'm not impressed by that. I'm not impressed by your ego. So put it aside, be a human, show some gratitude, and it goes a long way.
Yeah. That's the big one. Just going as far as just saying thank you. It seems to be foreign to a lot of people, so I'm
Yeah.
really glad you point that out. Um, it also goes along the lines of Amy's mantra, "Don't be a punisher."
God, I love Amy. I really love Amy so much.
Oh my, yeah, my interactions with her have been limited, but in the time I have spoken with her, it's always been fantastic. I love her.
Yeah, that's the general consensus. Amy's so beloved in the industry, and I mean, she's been in it for so long. When I first got into PR, she was the first person I emailed for advice. It would have been a dream back then to say I work for her. So I don't take it lightly that I'm on her team.
And what's it like to be on that team? Because for people who don't know, if you listen to any band in rock or metal, you guys probably work with them.
Yeah,
Um, like I can't even list all the names. There's a handful of you guys. Like it's a pretty small team, but you guys handle the
yep,
biggest names in the genre. So work with that level of artists, but also that level of people, because like you said, Amy is a gem of a human being. So
yes.
to be part of such a great team all around, what's that like for you?
It's such an honor. It's a total joy every day because I think what it really comes down to is we are so passionate about what we do. All of us love the music so much. Amy lives and breathes it the same way I do. Shane, him, Seth, Taylor, Rachel, we all, that's our whole team. That's everybody.
Yeah.
And we all really love what we do. Um, we're all super organized, super professional, but also have fun in the way that we so passionate. And I never could have dreamed that I'd be on a Cradle of Filth PR campaign. It's literally the coolest thing in the world to work for some of these bands that I genuinely grew up as a fan of. Like working for Memphis Mayfire right now is crazy. I bought
Hmm.
a Hot Topic t-shirt for my birthday when one of their albums had just come out. Like it's really surreal and exciting for me because I get to work with bands that I know like the back of my hand. But then I do get to help these up and comers who I also love just as much that I believe in so much. So to me, it's a total joy. I really like cannot complain about anything, even the Punishers.
Well, hopefully they're
And I learn a lot from our team too. I really every day I'm learning from them. I
I
learn from Amy
was
all the time.
I was wondering because, like, I'm sure there's a million email threads between you guys, but like, with Amy being in New Jersey and you being in Florida and Shane being in, I think, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
when it comes to like festival season, are there more than one of you guys at each festival, and do you guys get to see each other face to face very often?
I've actually only met Amy in person.
Oh,
But we do weekly Zooms. So we see each other on Zoom every week. We are always using Slack. So we're always like messaging each other all the time. Amy and I were at Rockville together last year, which was such a hoot. Watching Slipknot with her was like the craziest moment ever. I'm like, dude, you were on their most iconic album campaign.
yeah.
That's so sick. But yeah, like we're not always on site at the festivals. We don't have to be. We do all the schedules remotely. Tour managers, we put our trust in them to get the job done. But I usually go to a couple. Amy usually goes to a couple. We go when we can. We do our best.
What's it like for you guys behind the scenes? I know I talked to Amy about it with when I interviewed her because festival season is insanely hectic. Even if you're not there, just trying to schedule things around that, I'm sure is a nightmare. But when you're
Which
on,
that is my entire job as well. Like I do all the festival schedules. So like
oh,
you're talking to the right person on that.
oh, fantastic. So, okay, then when you're both on site and just preparing for it beforehand, what can you say, like, to give an impression to someone who doesn't know, like, what kind of chaos that's like?
Honestly, at a festival, I feel like a circus clown juggling like a lot. I'm juggling a lot. But I kind of do it to myself because I really like to be present with the bands. So like we'll sometimes have 10 bands playing in a day at Rockville, for example. And I want to make sure all of them are feeling loved, feeling appreciated, that I'm present with them and that I'm making sure they get to all their interviews and that their schedules are going okay. But then I'm also like, but I really want to go see Knocked Loose at 4 o'clock. So I usually don't make it to as many sets as I would like, but at the same time, it those days fly by. They're such a joy. But it is very hectic. But I'm usually off email those days. You won't find me on my email.
I
Like
would
I
hope
can't do it
not.
all.
let's get to the bread and butter here. This is coming out on International Women's Day, and when I had the idea of trying to do some sort of conversation for International Women's Day and celebrating female artists or just females in a male-dominated industry, you were one of the first people. No, you were the first person I thought of because of your work with She's with the Band and your work as a publicist yourself, because I have been on record many times with the opinion of a lot of the females that work in this industry, whether you're a photographer, a musician, a publicist, anything, a lot of you guys do much better work than us guys. So to have a
You
chance
said
to
it.
like yeah, and I will say it again and a million times over. So I but obviously when it comes to like perception and representation, it does feel a little out of my lane to talk about the misogyny in the industry and just how females are viewed in the wider scope of the music industry. But from your experience, just from when you first started out on Warped Tour, MySpace era to now, just how has it changed in general from your perspective?
I would say it's gotten better. I mean, there's more female musicians in metal than ever before than there were back then. I mean, it used to be more of a novelty, and I think that novelty is kind of wearing off. Where like female fronted band isn't like ooh, like this mysterious, like crazy, mind blowing, wow, a girl can scream thing anymore. Like I think we're realizing like, okay, women are capable. They are here. There are a lot of us. Um, I wouldn't say it's necessarily equal though. I think a lot of the negative stigmas still are looming over our head all the time of like she's just trying to sleep with the guys in the bands, or she's only here because she did that, or she only got where she is because she's pretty, or like you name it. I had somebody at Aftershock Festival last year ask me, I was I was as a publicist in the press area, following around the artist I was working with, making sure all his interviews are going well. Someone from a radio station asked me, "Oh, is that your boyfriend?" So like those assumptions are still loud and clear, no matter how I can portray myself as a professional in the strongest way possible with the firmest handshake, like it still exists. And so I think until that like disappears, we could just look at women as professionals who are paid equally and seen as equal. Like we still have a long way to go. And I know I get a lot of vulgar comments still all the time. I do. Like on my social media, it's crazy in there. And I
Jesus.
know that a lot of women in the industry, musicians, you name it, get a lot of the same comments about what they're wearing, how they look, and being perceived in that way versus the work that they do. So, something to consider as well.
How much do you look at like the social media comments because of that? Because I also know that for probably every comment that's like that, there's multiple comments that are actually complimentary of your work and you as a
Mm-hmm.
person. So like to sift through, I'm sorry for my language, but to sift through the bullshit, um,
Yeah.
do you do a lot of that or do you just kind of post and ghost because of those comments?
I wish I could post and ghost, but I am very attentive to comments. I would say because I've been doing this for so long, they don't affect me anymore. When I was younger, it was really brutal. But I don't really feel it harms me in any way, but I do like to be informed on what's going on. So I do look at everything, for better, for worse.
I'm glad you mentioned the concept of female fronted as a genre because, like you said, I do think that has gotten stale to a certain degree.
Which is a good thing technically that it's not
Yes,
novel anymore.
yeah, I agree. I think it should be the norm for sure. Not the term, the disintegration of the term should be the norm, and just have it as a metal band or a rock band or something like that. But also from a marketing standpoint, do you think it helps certain artists? Like, is there a benefit to that label, whether it's like female
Of
fronted
course.
or all female? Like, do you think that gets more attention in a way?
Yeah. And I don't think necessarily those terms are harmful. I know people have different opinions and we're all entitled to that. I don't think they're harmful because I do think women have unique perspectives and approaches to music that differ from men. I,
Yeah.
you look at gore as a great example of how femininity can intertwine with metal to create something really beautiful. Spirit Box is the same way. I think it's important to be able to be proud of the femininity that we bring to the genre that only we can do. And I think it's worth celebrating. I don't think it's something to shy away from or feel shameful to call yourself that. I guess more so it's like you said, where female fronted is like this novel genre that, like, okay, guys, there's girls in metal. Stop being surprised by it, but let's
Yes.
celebrate it.
I'm so glad you said let's not be surprised by it anymore because like I said this during my interview with Conquer Divide. For me and my upbringing and getting into music, like it was always kind of an equal thing for me because at the same time when I was getting into Rush and Alice Cooper, I was also getting into Joan Jett and Lita Ford and and then my sister was really big into Paramore and Avril Lavigne. And that now in today's industry, you got Stand Atlantic, Deadlands, Conquer Divide. The list really goes on and on. So for me, it was never really a new concept, but
Right.
like once I got on social media, then I see how much it was a new thing for some people. It's like, wow. It's like you don't realize how different certain perspectives can be. Um, but when you were getting into music, like, was it a normal thing for you too, or was it like a novel concept from your perspective?
I don't know that it was ever novel for me per se, because I mean, I had bands like Hey Monday, The Pretty Reckless were coming up. I had We Are the In Crowd. Um, there were like girls. Birthday Merge was one of my favorite bands. They were a Fueled by Ramen band. Paramore, of course, already existed. So they've always, I feel like women have always been here. It's just, are you paying attention? Like we've always been here. And I mean, when I started going to Warped Tour, the press area was always run by a woman. Production office was entirely female. Like we've always been here. I think there's sort of a stigma around like female empowerment being male bashing. I also have no problem with men. I mean, I have a problem with men who are not good to women, which,
Yeah.
that is a large portion, but not all. And so I really don't want to bring down the men in the industry because I think there's a place for all of us to thrive and succeed together. And I think really we need supportive men, like realistically.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like be in our corner. Let's all be equal. Let's all thrive. I mean, I understand that like some men may be threatened by that concept, possibly. I don't know, but to me, again, I have no intention of bashing anyone unless you're bashing me or bashing women in general or not supporting us. But if you're with us, be with us.
Like we said, the market it's saturated with musicians in general, but there have been a lot of female fronted bands and a lot of female artists to come out in recent years. So if you could give maybe a top five or just list a bunch, as many as possible, that are on your radar that are maybe not your favorites, but you think maybe have a big impact on the scene right now or are about to do really big things that just people need to have on their radar, who would they be and why?
Wow, big question. Big question. I actually want to pull up my little playlist because I really want to make sure I give nod. For me, the first woman that comes to mind that I really love is Chelsea Wolfe. I'm
Mm,
a big Chelsea Wolfe fan. Um, and she's done really amazing, but I want her to do even better. I want even more for her. Oh, Mannequin Pussy, who I had on, she's with the band recently. Marissa is she's so eloquent and so smart and it's such incredible use of a platform. Love them. Gore, I do think Gore is going to be really huge. They're
yep,
already like thriving, and I think it's only going to go uphill. Deadlands, like you said, Casey's amazing, and a
she's the
pal,
best.
the best. Oh, Ginger, I'm a huge
Oh,
Ginger fan.
yeah.
That's a crazy voice right there. Tatiana, wow. I mean, honestly, if I've had them on She's with the Band, it's because I support them. So really just go look at everyone who's been on She's with the Band and then some, and you'll find a lot. There are people I've declined because I'm like, doesn't quite align for one reason or another. Like I am very specific.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense too. And when it comes to She's with the Band, I know that that was kind of an opportunity that kind of, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but it kind of like it was kind of a sequence of events in a way. Um,
Mhm.
so for those who don't know about your show and what you do, could you talk about how it happened, how it started, and also how rewarding it is for you and just for the music industry in general to be platforming and celebrating these artists that deserve it?
Yeah. Well, basically, I was already a publicist when this came about because I was reaching out to Knotfest with metal bands that I was working with because every metal band I work with wants to be on Knotfest, which I agree. Amazing platform.
Yeah.
And I think one of the few metal sites right now that has amazing journalistic integrity and great quality content. So I was pitching the content director over there, like, hey man, I got this band. Would you be interested in covering them, please? And he responded to my email saying, Warp Tori, is that you? I
Oh,
was like, what? I was like, I don't even know who you are. Hi. And turned out he knew me from Warp Tour and through conversation. Well, essentially, I had said to him, I was like, I really do miss doing interviews. At that point, I had been offline doing interviews for like 2 years. I was like, I really miss it. Would you be interested in having another host? Through conversations, I found out later that when they launched the Knotfest platform in 2020, I was one of the first interviewers they had in mind for it, but they thought I had retired. They thought I wasn't doing any music stuff anymore. And I was like, oh my God, if they had just hit me up, if they had just hit me up. But timing is everything. And the timing was perfect when it all came about. And they were just like, yeah, do you have a concept for a podcast? And to me, it was like, a female focused podcast was the first thing that came to mind. I wanted there to be, I don't know, I just wanted to just be in the girly pops. Let's talk. Let me support you. Let's have a platform for you. Knotfest also was, and it still in a lot of ways is a very masculine looking site, looking platform. They support women, but I just kind of saw like this need for it, for like a softer side. And so I originally had teamed up with Alicia too, who was a host for Knotfest at the time. We joined in on it together. Later on, she ended up going into the wrestling world full time. So now it's just me. But yeah, it's been so rewarding to just have for any femme identifying artists who want to be a part of it because I think interviews can be scary for musicians. I think there's like a lot of pressure on press. And so for them to be able to come to my podcast and know it's a safe space, we're just having a conversation, they're able to open up and feel like they're in an environment where I'm not a journalist looking for clickbait. I'm not trying to get a headline or juicy gossip out of them. They could say something and know that I'm not going to like exploit it. I think it's created a really great environment for authentic conversation about what it's really like to be women in the industry, the good and the bad, because there's both. And yeah, every conversation has been totally different. And truly, like, I would say 90% of the people who come on the podcast end up becoming good friends afterwards. So I think that's a real testament to the vibe we create in these episodes.
I'm kind of curious what that's like for you, both as a fan of these artists and like when you think back to like when you were getting into music and wanting first starting out interviewing and the excitement of being in the green room with your favorite artists, like how much of a full circle kind of mind screwy moment is that for you? Like to like look back and be like, "Oh, I'm actually friends with these people now."
Yeah. I mean, I even had a moment yesterday because I mean, Lizzie Hale, gosh, is that somebody I looked up to that truly helped me become who I am in so many ways? And I had her on the podcast in person. And I just remember sitting across from her and telling her that, like, hey, I was able to come to terms with my womanhood, my sexuality, who I am because of your music. And I choked up. I was about to cry. I think she saw it in my eyes. She was like, uh oh, this girl's going down. And that was so full circle for me to have that moment with her. And just yesterday, she commented on my Instagram saying, love you, girl. And just like to see that feels so, I guess I wouldn't say I put these people on a pedestal in a way of like, oh, wow, that's a celebrity. They commented on my post. But I just have so much respect and appreciation for their courage and, um, and their influence on me and so many others. So I feel really honored that I get to have any of their time to celebrate that. And I don't take it lightly. I still don't take it lightly.
I love that story too, because I remember watching that episode of She's with the Band. I'm like, I wonder how much like how much people realize like when you look at artists, because I know for a lot of people Hailstorm is still a relatively new band, but like you look at Hailstorm and Nita Strauss and Ginger even, and like when I saw Nita Strauss in Greensboro, there were a lot of young women that were like inspired to play guitar or be a
Mhm.
musician by watching her. And like I still remember when she joined Alice Cooper's band or like back when she was in the Iron Maiden tribute band and like to see how far not only how far she has come but to see the impact that she's had on like young women is like incredible.
Yeah.
And the same for you. Like it's I think what you do both as a publicist and as a podcaster like to see someone in that position, I think a lot of young women can probably identify with you, and you definitely leave a strong impact on the next generation of music fans as well. Um,
Thank you. Thank you. It's been really emotional and exciting for me to see. I've had photographers come up to me at shows and say they became a photographer because they saw I was in media in some way. Or I had a girl message me on Instagram the other day. She's like, "Hey, I'm 14 years old. I want to be a music journalist. Can you give me advice?" I'm like, "I was 15 when I started. Here you go. Here's how I started. Just do it." And so and I had people like that when I started out, like the first pit reporter, Tiffany Mink, who did it. Well, she wasn't the first, but in 2010, she did it. She was the first one I was a huge fan of. And then when I became the pit reporter, she came out to a Warped Tour date, and it was so surreal for me. She was that person for me. And so to be able to pass down the torch in that way is like, I don't know, it's a bit of a mind fuck. I still can't totally wrap my head around that.
th-
Because I still feel like a fan. I still feel like a little girl, you know? So
yeah.
it's all very full circle, and I appreciate that.
Before I let you go, this is my favorite part of every interview. I have a speed round for you. Um,
Let's go.
I've got 5 questions. If you want to elaborate, you can. I'm not too strict with the speed part of this speed round. Um, but the first question, your favorite concert memory.
Oh God. What? Do you know how many concerts I've been to?
As soon as I said that, I'm like, she's been to 1,000 of those.
Oh my God. That's crazy. Um, I'm gonna go with a more recent one just because like it's the freshest one in my mind. I don't know if it's my favorite ever, but it's
Mm,
one that I think became a core memory last year was I was going to see Spirit Box Gojira and Corn, which like crazy lineup.
yeah.
But the traffic to get into the amphitheater was so bad that I was stuck in a just never ending line for over like an hour. So we actually missed Spirit Box, which was not my favorite memory. But I remember my friend and we were like, oh, it's probably still just the tail end of Spirit Box. We'll just walk to the venue. Like, it's totally fine. We were going like really, really for Gojira. That's like one of my favorite metal bands of all time.
Mm,
And I remember we were kind of in the parking area and we started hearing a riff and we were like, oh, that's Gojira. I know Gojira when I hear it.
yeah.
And it was raining. I remember it was muddy. I was in like these rocky motorcycle boots and we just start sprinting like our lives depended on it. And I just remember like it was actually such a fun and joyous moment despite being late. Like that rush of running and you could hear your favorite band playing and you're just like fucking going for it. And I remember we ran into the amphitheater so fast and we're running to our seats like when you have to run across the amphitheater to the other side. It was
Yep.
during the axe, which is such an epic song, and it just the whole thing felt so energizing and so epic because I don't get a lot of moments like that where I really feel like a fan, where I'm like going through the front entrance, I'm in the crowd, we're running, I'm late, but like there they are. And like kind of that reveal of like seeing them on stage when we just got in and we made it for most of their set. And like it was raining. So again, we're soaking wet. And like the whole thing just felt so chaotic, but in such a fun, exciting way. And it ended up being like, gosh, maybe one of the best sets I saw last year. Um, but to me, it was like one of those the journey is half of the fun kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. Because when I think of my favorite concert experiences, that's something I think about too, is like Obviously there's the show itself, but it's what happened before, what happened after, who you saw, who you talked to,
Yeah.
because that really makes or breaks an experience too.
Yeah.
Um, the next one, a mistake that you learned early in your career that was like a really good learning experience.
Mm. I think it's something I learned over time is that I need to focus. Well, not that you can't focus on your questions. You have to know your questions going into an interview. I
Yeah.
think once you're in the interview, the most important thing is to be a active listener. Be a good listener. Know your questions before you're there so that all you have to do is listen when you get there.
If there is one band or artist, like a bucket list artist that you want to work with, whether it's for She's with the Band or Beyond the Breakdown, or another interview show that will come in the future, maybe, who would that be and why?
Can I like go totally off the rails genre wise?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chapel Roan.
I was wondering, I thought
Yeah.
part of me thought it would have been VV, but also I was like, well, she loves Chappell Roan, so
Vivi like him.
yeah.
Like Billy Vallow. Oh my God. You know what? Look, if him gets back together, that's a no-brainer. That was one of my, I would say one of my first celebrity crushes was like Billy Vallow. Like,
Uh,
oh my God. But Chappell Roan's so important to me in so many ways, which I know is like so silly as a newer artist, but like her music has meant a lot to me and has been very transcendent for me. And like, what a crazy genre plot twist for me to be like such a Chappell Roan fan. But I'm so inspired by her courage. And I think like what she's represented for women in the music industry in terms of having boundaries, standing her ground, being so brutally honest and blunt. What she did at the Grammys, holy crap. I think she's more punk than most of these punk bands.
I agree.
She's punk.
This is a perfect segue into the next question then. One thing that you wish you could change about the music industry.
Oh God. One
You
thing I
can
wish I
list
could
off a
change.
few for sure.
Well, to me, the first thing that comes to mind, and I know that music is so personal for people, and it really is like for all of us, we live and breathe it, but I think maybe different like professional boundaries would be great. Like, I think everyone's so intertwined personally, or sometimes we don't treat it like work in the way that it needs to. Um, like, I think more professionalism and some boundaries would be really great. Um, and honestly, just kick out all the misogynists. If you are a misogynistic little, just get out. Just get out.
I love that. I wish
Kick him out.
I wish I could learn how to spell out that expression, that gesture, because that is the perfect way to describe those people.
Like, if you're the one in the press area asking, oh, is that your boyfriend? Kick him out. Kick him out. If you're checking my laminate because you think I'm like someone's girlfriend in the band, kick him out.
Name three songs.
Name three songs. Got, oh my God, get him out.
Oh
Leave.
my goodness. Well, on a lighter note, the last question, the most rewarding moment of your career so far.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'm sorry.
You know what? For me, one of the bands that really changed my life was Let Live, which is so wonderful that they're making their comeback right now. I think they were, I mean, I know for some people it's like Rage Against the Machine or other bands, but for me, Let Live was really a band that really taught me about activism in music and about the power of music for social change. And I was so inspired by them as a younger girl. And last year, I was at an Enter Shikari show. We were filming Beyond the Breakdown, the Enter Shikari episode of Beyond the Breakdown, and Fever 333 was opening. Who Jason Alon Butler, the singer of Fever, is also the singer of Let Live.
Hmm.
And him and I like have kept in touch over the years because I had interviewed Let Live a bunch and was always just so supportive and loud about how much I loved them. And him and I just got to sit down for like an hour backstage, just the two of us in a room and just talk. And there was something really poignant about that experience for me, where I really, for the first time, really was like, wow, this is someone I learned so much from and so inspired by, who's treating me as a peer and as an equal and values my opinion. And like, we can help each other. And to me, that was a really big signifier of how far I've come and how much I've grown up. Because when I first met him, I was a kid. Like I was 15, 16. So for him to treat me as such was really rewarding for me. And to this day, him and I still text, we speak, so supportive of each other. And that means a lot to me.
I can definitely see like how that experience kind of like stands out for sure. Because I know you guys get to do a lot of really cool things at Adam Splitting and you work with a lot of really cool artists, but to hear like one story that like really stands out like that is always really cool to hear. Because Amy had a couple stories like that too when I talked to her, and especially from, Slipknot and her Roadrunner days. So it's always cool to like talk to people who were like actually in the thick of it when certain events of a band's career actually transpired as it happened. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely worked on a lot of PR campaigns that were hugely rewarding for me too. I mean, bands that I love and look up to that I've been able to help get really big features. Like, I mean, I'm wearing my Skillet crew hoodie today,
Hey,
and I got them a huge feature in Billboard for their last album. And to be able to do that was also really rewarding because I'm like, wow, like this band like Skillet that I've known for God knows how long, you know? And I'm the one getting them in Billboard right now. That's crazy. And so I'm always inspired and happy when I get to help bands get their music out there. Like every day is rewarding in small ways.
I love that. Skillet was actually my first concert. Um,
Oh,
I saw them in a Baptist church 20 minutes away from my hometown in Jacksonville, which Jacksonville, North Carolina is a military town, but if it wasn't, nobody would know about it. And so this was like in town outside of that. So I'm like, what are they doing here? And
that sounds so on brand.
it was so cool. Um, yeah, so I have really fond memories of that show for sure. But yeah, that's a really cool story. Like, you're the one getting them into Billboard. Like, it's kind of like how
Right.
Amy, like Casey, when I interviewed her when she came to Jacksonville with Deadland, she was talking about with Nita Strauss, like Amy got her wedding like put in People magazine and all this other stuff. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've all had really cool moments like that of getting to help musicians we love. And it's always really cool. Especially like I appreciate when we get gratitude. Like for Skillet to send me a crew hoodie. I know that they appreciate the work I'm doing. And that's always really, really nice.
Yeah. Um, well, that was everything that I had for you for this go around. I'm sure we'll be emailing again in the future. I could
Probably
talk to you.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours, honestly, but I will let you go. But was there any closing message to anyone who wants to keep up with you, what you're doing with Adam Splitter or Knotfest, anything like that?
I mean, Instagram's always the best way to get a hold of me at Tori Kravitz. She's with the band is going strong. There's lots of good episodes coming. Beyond the breakdown too, we have some cool stuff in the pipeline. So notfest.com is where you'll find all of that. But like just thank you for listening. If you made it to the end of this, you really like to hear us. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I think in my very first email to you, I said like I'm a professional yapper when it comes to this
Yes.
stuff. Like, because I'm a very introverted person, but I love music so much, and I love talking to people who are just as passionate about it. Th This was a really fun conversation. I had a blast talking with you. And
Likewise.
it was great, like you said, great to like talk with you semi in person outside of emails. Hopefully we run into each other at a show at some point down the line. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about your journey through the industry. Um, and to everyone who watched this, thank you for watching. And until the next interview, stay tuned, stay scared, and I'll catch you later.